Most people think the danger of a Ouija board starts when the planet moves, but in these stories, the real warning comes after. When the same presence keeps coming back, when it knows things no one in the room should know, when it asks you to return, or when the signs follow you even after the game ends. Listen closely because every story has one moment where they should have stopped playing, and by the end, you will know the signs that mean you may have contacted something you can't easily send away. On to the stories. In 2017, five of my friends and I moved into a new house to find we weren't the only ones living there. We had been looking forward to moving in for almost a year. Second year meant no more cafeteria food, dawns, or public bathrooms, only six friends living together happily. We quickly made the house our home, decorating the walls and hosting a few too many housewarming parties. We felt safe, happy, and comfortable in our new place. Shortly after settling in, my housemate and I heard unexplainable sounds throughout the house. We would hear the shower sliding door move on its own, footsteps sound from upstairs, and the front door open and close. We were suspicious of the sounds, but quick to brush them off and continue with our lives. That was until the evening of October 25. While all six of us were sitting around the dining table, a pan on the stove began to rock back and forth on its own. We tried to play it off as normal, but nothing could explain the shaking. We decided we had had enough. We had to get to the bottom of these strange occurrences. 10 minutes later, we would lit candles and set up a homemade Ouija board in the middle of our table. To use a Ouija board, each player lightly places one finger on the planchette, a wooden triangle used for these ceremonies, and questions the room's spirits. If one is contacted successfully, the planchette moves itself around the board and spells out words or numbers to answer the questions. Is there anyone here? We asked the board. No response. We asked again and again, but still no response. After a couple more tries, the planchette dragged itself to the word yes written on a piece of paper. Once we were sure there was someone there, we continued to ask questions to find out who exactly we were talking to. What's your name? We asked. Slowly but surely, the planchette moved to the letters A, D, and Y until it spelled out ADYSOT. My housemates and I continued to communicate with him for a few minutes until we felt we were no longer speaking to a dirt. We asked if there was another presence with us, and it turns out there was. This time, the spirit's name was Pam, 3-year-old good spirit, according to her. Realizing there was more than one spirit with us, we asked the board how many there were in our presence. The planchette slid to number 8. With news of our 8 additional roommates in mind, we decided that was enough for one night and stopped the game. After looking up the standard conditions of using Ouija boards, my housemates and I discovered we had broken some of the rules with our first try. Ouija boards are supposed to open the connection to the spirit world, attracting and inviting spirits from all over. They shouldn't be played at home. If you play where you live and connect with a malevolent spirit, it can stay in your house. Spirits can't be trusted. A spirit can take possession of players and gain access to their mind. The next night, we decided to break out the Ouija board and play again. This time, we asked how many spirits were with us. The answer this time was 27. After asking who was with us a few times, we compiled a list of names. Nudu, Worth, Lukuv, Matt, and Cody, to name a few. When asking whether or not they had good intentions, Nudu was one of the few that replied no. I suggested asking Nudu if he had taken possession of any of us. He answered no until it got to my housemate Emily, and the planchette quickly swiveled over to yes. We put Nudu's answer to the test by asking personal questions about Emily only she would know. How many concussions has Emily had? I asked. The planchet made its way over to the number 4. We looked over at Emily, who had a look of horror on her face. Nudu was right. While Nudu answered the rest of our questions correctly, we couldn't rule out the fact that Emily's hand was on the planchet all the time. Maybe she was purposely or subconsciously guiding it in a certain direction. We told Emily to take her hand off the board but stay where she was. Then we asked, "What is Emily's brother's girlfriend's last name?" None of us knew the answer. The board replied. We looked over at Emily and she confirmed that it was the right name. We were all in disbelief. A few of my housemates decided they were done playing and lifted their fingers off the board. Without even asking a question, the planchet moved to the corner of the board. With only 3 remaining fingers on the edges of the short glass planchet, we never could have made that happen on our own. Although that was the last time we ever played Ouija, the story doesn't end there though. The following weeks were bad. My housemates and I were constantly uneasy in our home and got especially nervous at night. We all felt as though we were being watched. We saw dark shadows in the corners of our rooms and suffered from horrible nightmares. Emily would often wake up in the middle of the night screaming for help, convinced she saw a figure in front of her. One night, while I was lying in bed, I heard a noise coming from my window, like someone running nails up and down my wooden blinds. After one too many sleepless nights, we decided to hire a medium. We showed the medium around our home and told her what happened. Although we didn't tell her where we felt the dark spirit, she was able to identify the exact spots we felt their presence most. When the medium described the characteristics of the spirit she sensed, it was exactly the type of presence I had felt. We all agreed the spirit was an adult male in his late 20s or early 30s. He was a bit of a loner. Was this adult? She helped us remove the presence by lighting sage and encouraging him to go towards the light. We truly felt better afterwards. I no longer saw dark shadows in the corners of my room and stopped feeling like I was being watched at night. We thought the spirit listened to us, complied with the medium's instructions, and left us alone. About a week later, when dropping off the payment for the sessions, the medium told us something that stays with me till today. The spirit she had helped us get rid of was now following her. Although this happened almost a year ago, there's still rarely a day that goes by where I don't think about these events in one way or another. My friend and I became obsessed with the Ouija board in high school. It got to the point where we would rush home from school to play it every single day. A few weeks in, my friend finally revealed to me that when her parents first moved into their house, her mother had found the Ouija board in the basement where we would always play and tried throwing it away on more than one occasion but would always find it back in the house. So she hid it back in the basement as best she could until my friend found it. This should have been my first clue to stop playing it, but for some reason I had no fear of Ouija boards. In the beginning, other friends and her brother would play with us, but eventually everyone ended up getting too scared. I remember our one friend flying up the stairs and knocking down a glass shelf and shattering it along with some of the things on it. Her brother stopped playing with us when we asked for a sign and something grabbed his leg. We would ask questions the other couldn't possibly know. One example is I asked my old house number and old phone number since her and I had only been friends for a little over a year and I had moved several years before that, and the board instantly spelled out both. This was around 2002, so it's not like it was easy for a 15-year-old to get that info. It got to the point where it was honestly an addiction and we would only ever get the same entity every time. A 3-letter name that I looked up as an adult and sure enough is a demon name. It would tell us how we would have to come back and talk to it the next day. It tricked us into thinking it was a little boy who was lonely and just wanted to play with us. Her mom started watching us play because she was so fascinated by it and how it would flicker the lights or make sounds when we asked. She would have us ask questions we couldn't know the answer to. Can't recall any specific questions now, but I can still see her shocked face, white as a ghost, when we would give her the answer. Even though we usually played alone in the dark basement, her parents were always home and we always had at least a candle burning, so there was some level of safety we felt. One night though, we were at her home and her parents had gone out for dinner and drinks and we were alone. It was dark and rainy and just a spooky night in general. We were playing with the board in the basement and the usual was happening. We were asking for signs and hearing noises, and then the power went out. We got really scared, but for some insane reason, we brought the board upstairs and lit candles and played in the living room. This is when the board spelled out a very unique, old fashioned name and told me I needed to ask my father about it. Turns out, my father had a nanny I never heard about, and his mother had to fire her when my grandfather died, and her and my father never got to say goodbye to each other. My father is a devout Catholic man who does not believe in these things but knew there was no way I would know that information, and he was dumbfounded. After this, the candles blow out, which never happened before. We start holding on to each other and her cell phone starts ringing from a private number. She refused to answer the phone. As soon as her cell phone stopped ringing, the house phone started ringing. Again, this was 2002. She starts screaming and absolutely refused to answer the phone. I'm thinking to myself that her parents are out and trying to get a hold of her, so I answered the phone. When I picked it up, I heard an old woman laughing. Honestly, the creepiest thing I have ever heard. I can still hear it. I keep saying hello while she is laughing and she finally says, "Yes." I said back, "What do you mean yes? You called me." She starts laughing again and goes, "No honey, you called me." I hung up the phone and we went running out of the house. We used her cell phone to call my sister to come pick us up, who just so happened to go to Lilydale the week before and got a reading where the same woman's name, the nanny, came through to her. We stopped playing the Ouija board in her house after that, but for some reason played a couple of more times with another friend. Finally, I learned enough about the spirit world to know better and never touched one again. I also never truly understood the significance of the woman saying, "You called me," until I was telling my friend the story a few years ago. Moral of the story: don't play with Ouija boards ever again. It did not happen with me, but an ex-GF I used to date. She told me the story of when she was in the 6th grade. She and her friends were interested in the occult and witchcraft. They wanted to imitate the characters on the TV show Charmed. One of her friends even claimed to have been born with her third eye open, so she saw things that weren't there. She was their designated medium and she was regarded as the most experienced among them. They all went to a Catholic girls' school, and during one of the school-wide masses that every student had to be present for, they snuck back to their empty classroom one by one to perform a simpler version of the Ouija board known as summoning the spirit of the glass/coin, where you draw a makeshift Ouija board out of paper and ink and use either a coin or drinking glass. Some of them thought that to perform the ritual correctly, they had to do it on an auspicious day, Fridays, Sundays, Mondays, holidays, etc. Then they had to recite the Lord's Prayer and Apostles' Creed backwards. I don't know how. Not long after that, they started. Almost immediately, they summoned someone or something. They all swear the drinking glass they used started moving on its own, and whatever they summoned answered questions aggressively. The one leading the ritual was their supernaturally attuned friend, who was also asking the questions. At some point, they asked one of the big questions: what will happen in the future? Whatever they summoned, answer them. One of you will die. They asked, who? It said the name of their medium friend. They asked how. It said, I will kill you. At that instant, the glass shattered simultaneously as lightning struck a tree branch close to the windows outside their classroom. The lights in the room were flickering on and off, and a strong wind out of nowhere blew the windows and doors of the classroom open in a maelstrom, which they locked and closed for privacy, by the way. They all freaked out and ran out of their classroom like hell is breaking loose. All of them except their medium friend, who looked like she was in a catatonic trance, and they left behind in the eye of the raging chaos they summoned. When they were found by their teachers and classmates, they all felt nauseous and unwell after their experience. Their parents were called and they all were suspended for a while. They tried to ask what their friend saw or experienced while she was catatonic. She would get distraught and would just keep saying she either didn't remember or she refused to speak of it. They all recovered with seemingly no ill effects except for their medium friend, who was expelled and was never heard from again. They supposedly stopped dabbling in the occult after that. Needless to say, I was freaked out just listening to her tale at the time. Something in the haunted look she had in her eyes and the sincerity with which she told her story convinced me she was telling the truth or what she thought really happened to her. I, 56M, had a Ouija board when I was in the 6th grade, so 1980-81. Over the winter, some friends and I used it a lot and it was very active with us. I didn't think there was anything dangerous about it. I carried it around with me everywhere. It mostly seemed a bit spooky, but I thought it was innocent fun. I understood enough to know that something paranormal was going on, but it didn't alarm me. In January, things took a dark turn. Something very aggressive and ugly started coming through. It was vulgar. The planchette would react violently and move with only the lightest touch. I don't recall if it ever said explicitly that it was a demon, and I don't think I understood enough at that age to have understood the implications if it had. I did understand though, it was negative and strong. I used the board alone several times and it worked. The same entity always came through. It said it hated me. The planchette would fly off the board. Then it said it was going to kill me. After that, I stopped using it. Not because I took the threat seriously, rather because it was just not fun anymore being mistreated by a game. This was in February. Fast forward several weeks to the spring. I came down with chickenpox, a pretty severe case. Complications ensued. Violent vomiting, delusions, hallucinations, intense pain. My mom took me to the emergency room. I was admitted into the ICU. The doctors were puzzled though. They thought it might have been encephalitis because my brain was swelling, but there were differences and my case was extremely severe. They were at a loss. Fortunately for me, a doctor was visiting the hospital from Seattle who was an expert in Reyes syndrome. Reyes syndrome is a crazy reaction the body has in children to aspirin when they have viral infections like chickenpox. He diagnosed me correctly and put me in an induced coma for about 2 weeks to lessen the swelling of all of my organs. After a really tough battle, I survived. The mortality rate is 35%. Even in 1981, it was extremely rare. I was one of only 221 cases in the US that year. The next year, aspirin companies were forced to put a warning label on aspirin bottles about Reyes syndrome, which remain to this day. Have a look on an aspirin bottle. Reyes syndrome has effectively disappeared now. I can't prove it was the entity that came through that caused it. Maybe a coincidence. I believed it was related, however. Although I am not religious, a family friend who was a priest organized prayers for me in churches all over the country. I think there is power in that, and this may have helped me survive. I physically recovered, but I am still very emotionally scarred. I don't talk about it much. I can't without breaking down crying. I'm crying now. There is so much pain and trauma associated with it that I always carry it around. Feels a bit of relief to share it somewhere. God knows, I have had a few bad experiences with the Ouija board in my time. I vowed I would never do it again. When I was about 23, I was staying with a friend whose house was most definitely haunted, especially the kitchen, which was right under my room. I heard all sorts of noises coming from down there at night, where I knew she was asleep and her 3-year-old was in the room next to mine with a baby gate on it. The first time anything happened, it wasn't a true Ouija board experience, but in the fact we used candles to communicate instead of a board with just yes no answers. There was just me and my friend. The other two were in the kitchen with the door shut, and her son was asleep in bed upstairs. You could not get upstairs without coming through the room we were in. We started asking questions, and eventually we were getting answers. Then we asked if this was a friend that had died, and if it was, could they make all the candles move? We had two in the middle of the table and 8 around the outside, and as soon as we said it, there was like a swirl of air around us, and each candle in turn flickered. Up to date, it's the most unexplainable night to happen to me. So then I stared at one of the flames and asked if the person who was there could put it out. Neither of us were sat near the candle I asked to be blown out. Then it just started getting dimmer and poof, it went out. We were both excited but a bit creeped out at the same time. Then there was a huge bang from upstairs. My friend went to check up thinking her son had fallen out of bed. She came back down white, saying he was fast asleep, but a load of books from his box were scattered all around the room. They hadn't been when she put him to bed. Then the scariest thing ever happened. There was another loud thud upstairs, and then very loud thumping footsteps down the stairs, and the handle on the door at the bottom started rattling like crazy. Only for a few seconds, but there was no one there to rattle it. I opened the door, no one there. Then, just to top the night off, my phone was on the top of the TV, which was off. It was 2 a.m. at this point, and it started ringing. I wondered who could be ringing me at 2 a.m. unless if it was an emergency. I got up to get my phone, and the number on the display said 00000000. Well, that was it. I lost it. I have spent the night in haunted houses, derelict mental hospitals, etc. But these nights scare the hell out of me. When I answered the phone, it was just static and then cut off. Then on a different night, the same friend said she wanted to try a Ouija board in her house. I said I'm not taking part, especially as everything that happened last time. So her and her auntie did it, while I sat on the sofa drinking a beer and playing on my phone. We went up to bed about 1 a.m. Her aunt was sleeping on the sofa downstairs. I woke up at 2 a.m. to the bed shaking. Me being half asleep was thinking, what the hell have they released from that Ouija board? I came to and the room was shaking and I could hear the pipes banging under my floor. It was an old house. Then it just suddenly stopped. If I hadn't been drinking, I was ready to know the flip out of there. But I don't drink and drive. Anyway, the next morning on the news, it turned out there's been an earthquake right at the time I woke up. I've never been so glad for a normal explanation for something. Both these stories are 100% true. I like to believe in the supernatural, but I'm also very science-minded and find rational reasons for things happening. So it takes a lot to prove to me that something has no explanation. That first night was one of those times, and 13 years later, and I still can't explain it to this day.